This is a Huddle Sports Network broadcast. You can find us on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Facebook, and of course YouTube. Get all your NFL news here first.
And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on the Huddle Sports Network. I'm Taylor Phillips. He's Ed Smith. We're going to get the rest of the old stuff, the old news out of the way, including Jim Harbaugh, Mel Tucker. Then we got some Tigers and Lions to talk about. Former Michigan Wolverines football head coach and current Los Angeles Chargers head coach Jim Harbaugh decides not to be one of the honorary captains, one of the co-honorary captains in the season opener at Michigan Stadium against the Fresno State Bulldogs, the big house in Ann Arbor. Harbaugh, the reasoning for that is apparently the NCAA hitting Harbaugh with a 4-year showcase order due to impermissible recruiting violations during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. Now, current Michigan football head coach Sherrone Moore got involved in a separate NCAA investigation. He turned text messages into the NCAA enforcement staff after recovering them. Sherrone Moore was also accused of committing a Level 2 violation, according to the draft. Level 1 violations are deemed the most serious, but he could be labeled a repeat violator by the NCAA after reaching negotiated resolutions for violations in these separate recruiting infractions that led to Harbaugh's show cause order. Now, we all know that his show cause order had nothing to do with him leaving Michigan, because you and I pointed out on the air weeks ago that Harbaugh and Athletic Director Ward Manuel at the University of Michigan came to a disagreement after the Wolverines won their national college football playoff national championship. But now this is just something. This is something different right here for Harbaugh and for Sherrone Moore. I'm not even sure if he's going to get in trouble or not. Ed, what say you about that?
Well, in regards to Sherrone Moore, I would say there is potential that there might be some form of punishment levied against him because, like you mentioned, due to his role in this issue alone that led to Harbaugh getting his 4-year show cause, he could be deemed a repeat violator. So once you get veer into that territory, there's a likely chance you may face some form of punishment. Could be a suspension of some kind. Could be for a game, depending on how severe the NCAA believes this punishment should be levied against Moore. But in regards to Harbaugh, let's specify and point out the fact that this is the result of the investigation into what we call as Burgergate. This has nothing to do with the sign stealing scandal or counter stealings of any of that nature, even though that'll likely be referenced in some way, shape, or form when it comes to the conclusion of that matter. Now, what it means for this 4-year show cause is that Coach Harbaugh cannot be involved in practically any team activities. That means practice, meetings, you name it. And I'm sure that likely played a factor or played a role in his this whole honorary captain thing being ultimately rescinded. I'm sure there was a part of Harbaugh that wanted to be there because, like you mentioned, it's quite a good thing that you pointed out Ward Manuel, because we had discussed previously on the show that problems between Ward Manuel and Harbaugh them not being together on the same accord was one factor that played into his leaving Michigan. So I'm not really surprised to hear that come after this decision being announced. And also, I do think it's a little bit laughable because the fact they're living this against a guy who is not there anymore, and the fact that they tacked on a quote unquote 1 year suspension from the NCAA is just laughable at this point. And to quite show you how Michigan felt about this and what they probably feel about whatever impending looming decisions that may or may not be made. Their response to all this news recently was, just finish unveiling the fact they were constructing their national championship banner. And the fact that they were, even considering having Harbaugh come in as an honorary captain for their season opener, that says all of basically a metaphorical middle finger to the NCAA.
Yeah. But then Harbaugh decided to opt out I guess
it could have been tied to the terms of this decision, because this could be seen as some form of team activity, when you think about it. And he didn't want to bring unnecessary heat that he's already brought as is.
Right. So the Wolverines kick off next week, Saturday, against those Fresno State Bulldogs. I think it's at noon.
No, actually, it's going to be the Saturday night game.
Saturday night game. That's right. Yeah.
It's getting the NBC treatment.
Oh yeah, awesome. So hey, I don't know how good Fresno State is. I haven't done too much research on them.
Well, we got time between now and next week. It's considered it'll be next week anyway. That'll be when we can do our official preview to set up the whole season, at least the very least break down that game.
Yeah,
preview that game specifically, but it's good to know that, hey, that's a reminder. We're less than 2 weeks away from seeing actual football again.
Yeah, the sooner we do it, the better. But I guess we can wait until like next week, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. Still can't be too late. So, former Michigan State Spartans football head coach Mel Tucker sued Michigan State University for wrongfully firing him. The lawsuit that was filed Wednesday accuses the university officials of undertaking an improper sham investigation, quote unquote, of allegations that Tucker sexually harassed and exploited rape survivor Brenda Tracy. The lawsuit also alleges that MSU officials violated his rights due to process and equal protection, as well as his employment agreement with the school, and that also interim president Teresa Woodruff and athletic director Alan Haller made false and quote, and I quote, false and defamatory unquote public statements against Tucker, and I quote, further destroying the plaintiff's reputation, his professional standing, and his livelihood, unquote. It also contends that school leaders, quote, manipulated the process to create a pretextual and false basis to terminate his employment, unquote. It contends that school officials deprived him of his right to a confidential and fair investigative process, and that they cared nothing about the damage being inflicted, unquote, on him after Tracy's allegations were made public by USA Today on September 23rd of last year, 2023. The defendants instead were alarmed that the USA Today articles once again made lawsuit states by improperly, well, yeah, I couldn't finish that one, but once again made, let me dig it up here. Once again, Tucker was in at the third year of his 10-year, $95 million contract. He's due to earn $80 million remaining on the deal. Yikes! The USA Today articles. Once again made MSU's history of failing to properly deal with sexual abuse allegations the subject of national media attention. It's unquote, it states.
Yeah.
It also yep. The lawsuit states quote, by improperly weaponizing the university's investigative procedures against Tucker to experience severe emotional harm and suffering and have caused hundreds of millions in damages, unquote. University spokesperson Emily Gurkin-Garant said in an email last week, Thursday, that the university declined to comment on it and that it had not been formally served with the suit as of last week, Thursday morning. Also, a resolution officer concluded that in October of last year that Tucker engaged in behavior that violated the school's relationship violence and sexual misconduct and Title IX policies by sexually harassing and sexually exploiting Brenda Tracy. And in January, the school denied Tucker's appealing of these findings. And finally, to top it all off, an attorney that was hired by the school as an equity review officer said that Tucker had failed to prove error on basis. So we can't really tell that whether or not Tucker is right or wrong.
Basically, what it's coming down to essentially, Taylor, it's a combination of one side claiming things being done and said versus another. It's instead of he said, she said, it's he said, he said. We saw details of, by the way, it's a 75-page document. It has been made available to see online courtesy of Channel 7 News on their website. So if you go to there or go to the link of that story, they will have that full document in full to view. And within that, you see, some of the things that you mentioned, Taylor, the references of the timeline of issues that were going on within the school and or the board of trustees. It names names like the former interim president, the AD, Alan Holler, the VP of Legal Affairs and General Counsel, Brian Quinn. Goes on and on. Tuck is essentially trying to get his side of the story out as best as he possibly can. He's pulling out all the stops. He's claiming he was wrongfully terminated, claiming he didn't get due process, even pulling out the whole racial discrimination. I won't say race card or excuse, but he is using that tactic to try to garner whatever sympathy that he can. And really what it boils down to, and in my view, and in my opinion, it comes down to the fact that within this, it's said that he's asking for compensation that's unspecified. Basically, what it's come down to, what I believe it's always come down to ever since he was fired, is that Mel Tucker is trying to get back some of that massive money that was still owed on his contract, that because he violated a certain term and on his contract and was fired in the school's view for just cause. That means he wasn't getting a dime of that remaining $80 million. The fact that he was then sued by the alleged victim in this, by Tracy. Excuse me, I'm not calling alleged victim or any of that sort of thing, because we know about the details of the case at this point. Because he was sued by her for nearly that exact amount. Thankfully, that case was dismissed because we saw more evidence coming out that was proving more of the nature of their affair, if you want, so to speak. So really, what it comes down to, in my view, is that Tucker is just trying to get back whatever money that he can back from the school, since he knows he can't get any back or get any of that that was voided from his contract when he was let go.
Yeah. So this case may not be over yet, but
it may not be over. It may not be over, but I can offer a prediction. I don't believe it's going to go far, and even if it does, I don't see Tucker really having a solid case to win. I don't think that, like I said, if he has an end goal, if anything, it's just to see whatever money he can recoup from the school. Yeah,
I gotta have to agree with you. So the Tigers get Riley Green and Kerry Carpenter back from the injured list. They recalled Spencer Torkelson, a 650-something OPS. Yikes! I got to dig it up in my photos on my phone real fast. It's a 652 OPS with a 217 batting average. His average
Yes.
is kind of the same as it was in his average, but his OPS, which has usually been 600, around 600, has slightly grown to 652, around the 650 mark. That's a bit of progress there by Torkelson, but it just needs to keep on rising. It's
Well,
slowly rising, but it needs to
it
keep
helps.
rising.
It helps more if he finds a way to get consistent at bats that end with him on base, whether it be a hit or a walk or whatever the case. Because from what we've seen out of him so far since he came back from Toledo, this one stat that caught my eye, he has an OBP of 500. It's on base percentage of 500, meaning literally half the time he's had at bat so far, literally half of them have ended with him on base. Whether it be the 6 hits that he got between 2 against the Yankees and the 4-for-4 game he had against the Cubs, or the 2 walks that he's garnered in that time span as well. If you find a way to get on base, I'm all for it, because it means it's leading to potential scoring opportunities, which is what this offense should always strive for, especially when you have the type of pitching talent on this roster. So that's the one thing that I can look at as some kind of way to view that. Okay, he's showing something, but I'm still not too impressed of what I see overall, because at this point I've accepted Torque for what he is, a prospect that had hype, but unfortunately, it just seems it's not going to deliver. Now, whether that means he's going to be moved within the next couple of years or so, we'll see. We'll see how things are operated, or how Scott Harris is going to look into things. But for now, he is what he is, and we're stuck with it. Now, I will say, in Kerry Carpenter's case, seeing him come back has been an immense needed addition to this lineup. The fact that he's gotten so far in the month of August, gotten your 4 home runs, 8 RBIs, and an OPS of over 900, 929 to be exact, shows you that type of spark that's been missing from the lineup, in addition to Riley Green. Now, once Green gets shakes off some of the rust, he can be the effective self that he was showing before his injury. The fact that he had a 3 RBI game against the Cubs recently showcases that, in my view. And I think, like I said, they had to make some balances, bring down some people, call down some people that they probably didn't want to call down. It was all about making room, making adjustments, and considering who you're going to bring back up later on for that 27-man or part of the 27-man roster anyway. So I'm not too worried about guys like Akil Baddoo. Like, for example, if he gets called up again and then gets sent down again this season by rule, by law, by bylaw, he would have to be DFA'd. So I think the Tigers are trying to avoid that as much as possible, even if he doesn't get called up again this year, so be it. But they know what they have. They know what they see, the value that they see in certain players and certain pieces. They're just trying to manage that accordingly based on around the situation of their availability was. But between that and from what I've seen so far, I like the fact that Carpenter has shown some promise. I like the fact that Parker Meadows is not slowing down at all. And, you know, while I see promise in what they showcase in sweeping a Mariners team that was coming in, on a wave as a team in first place of their division, and winning a series against the Yankees that included, that dramatic Little League Classic win that was showcased on ESPN.
Walk-off style in 10 innings, 3-2.
Mm-hmm. Despite all that, you still see the inconsistencies of not maintaining strong stretches, not having enough steady arms to where you can't have a full rotation where every 4th or 5th day you got to be going through bullpen days or burning through as many arms as possible. So once the roster gets more properly filled out in key pieces and key cornerstones, then you'll see more advancement of the improvement, the more development of the improvement, because we see it in bits and pieces and bites. At this point, they're basically projected to finish at 500 or close to it, which is, again, not terrible considering of what the team has been in the past few years, but still, with a fan base that has been anxious and as patient as possible to see some type of payoff on this rebuild, 500 is just not going to be cutting it. So you got to wonder what they're going to do for this upcoming offseason. What can they do? The fact that, they did not trade Scooble, what are they going to do to build around him for this upcoming offseason and beyond? That is what I would be looking at if I was seeing anything what the Tigers were going to do.
Yeah, they released Gio Urshela, and they called up Dylan Dingler and Jace Young. Jace Young, in an 8-2 win on Wednesday, committed 2 throwing errors in the same game. And right now, after today's 10-2 blowout loss, Jace Young is hitting .211 with a .559 OPS. Dylan Dingler is hitting .184 with a .620 OPS. The Tigers are 62 and 66. Speaking of 500, that's below that. 11.5 games back, 4 spots, and then 4 spots and 9.5 games back in the third American League wildcard spot. Those standings numbers are not good enough, and that 10-2 loss, it's just yet another example of proof of why the Tigers are have proven that they are not ready to contend for an MLB postseason seed as of yet. But they could next year. They have to retool the roster. They have to buy out Javier Baez. They most certainly have to buy out Kenta Maeda, who gave up 6 earned runs on 9 hits, 5 innings pitched after Tyler Holton pitched a very perfect first inning. Maeda has a 6.42 ERA with a 1.44 WHIP. Those numbers are still freaking awful, Ed.
Yeah, for a guy that was supposedly brought in to be a back-end battery guy to rotation, the fact that you moved him, had no choice but to move him to the bullpen because he was so awful, says it all on your investment. But yeah, good usage of money.
Yeah. I mean, he was doing great until today. He just went back to his old self, even as a relief pitcher. They got to buy him out. Not to mention Javier Baez, but specifically Maeda.
Well, I understand the word have to, but here's the key word. Will they? Will they? As in, will Chris Ilitch actually realize the smart thing, the necessary thing, and do what he has to do? That's what I don't trust. Sorry.
Right. Because he's marionetting Scott Harris and Jeff Greenberg in the front office, the administration. Yeah, he's like marinating both the administrations of the Tigers and the Red Wings, for example.
Right. Whatever.
Keeping Sergei Fedorov's number 91 jersey, by the way, from being retired atop the rafters at Little Caesars Arena, let alone demolished Joe Louis Arena back a while back.
Speaking of demolished, that speaks on a, reminds me a little bit of some of the issues that not only Chris but really the Ilitch company in general has had their own little contributions to things not being properly fulfilled in and around the city. But that's another topic for another day. We're digressing, going off on a tangent here. But yeah, while things are seemingly on a better mend with the Red Wings, we're not getting that type of quick progress with the Tigers, it seems. It seemed to be like a keeping up with an Ilitch family tradition. The Tigers will always get the leftovers versus the primary heapings that the Wings will get first. The Tigers always get the scrapings when it comes to care and concern for the Ilitch family. That's what I've always viewed it as.
Yeah, instead of caring and concerning of how they're doing, they keep on making excuses, one excuse after another, whether it's in the front office or the Tigers radio network, the media, even TV, that like Kirk Gibson, Dan Dickerson blaming the wind. It's only 9 miles. It was only 9 miles an hour in the series opener at Wrigley. Parker Meadows hit a fly ball to left. It just wasn't hit hard enough. Let's just face it. Just need to hit it harder. A 9 mile an hour wind does not kill a ball, like Dan Dickerson quoted. It killed that ball. No, a 9 mile an hour wind doesn't do that.
Well,
Now,
actually,
baseball is not a wiffle ball, for Christ's sake.
honestly, it does depend on where the direction the wind could be blowing, like affecting where the trajectory of where the ball is hit.
Normally it does.
Versus where it's going to land. In some cases.
Normally it does, but only 9 miles an hour. If it were 15 plus miles an hour, I would understand that. But only 9, not enough to me.
Hey, that's almost 10. I consider that as close to double digits as you can possibly get. So
I get that, but still, it's not enough.
That's nothing to sniff at, in my view.
Right. Yeah, but really, the excuses have to aside.
I can agree with you on the excuses part in general, but it's just that one. That one might have a little bit more validity. Not too much, but again. There's still way too many excuses being made in general.
That's true.
Why this organization can't do more to compete now? That should be the overall main issue. Why are they not doing more to compete now? The Red Wings are doing it. Hell, they brought back Patrick Kane. Some were thinking, myself included, they were going to get Steven Stamkos to go with it. So why can't the Tigers do?
Stamkos went to Nashville to the Predators.
Right, but even still, the fact that they were considered as potential team, potential finalists to land him, why can't the Tigers be doing that?
Right. The Red Wings picked up Vladimir Tarasenko, a 2-time Stanley Cup champion, for God's sake.
Again, speaks to what I've been saying. They're basically second-class citizens within the Ilitch family.
Yeah, exactly. So the Lions beat the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium again, 24-23 in NFL preseason week 2. Yes, Nate Sudfeld started. He threw a touchdown pass. He threw an interception. He went like 3 and out on first, second, and third and goal. They settled for a Jake Bates chip shot field goal before the half. When I saw sneaking into the break room at work at Samaritas after we were done serving our residents dinner on a Saturday early evening. Jake Bates, being the automatic kick lord that he is, the real man of a kicker, did his job. He kicked the game-winning field goal as time expired. Hendon Hooker returned to action. I guess either he tested negative for a concussion or it didn't take too long, but somehow he returned to the football field and did very well. Your thoughts?
Basically, I'll start what you just finished off at with Hendon Hooker. From what Dan Campbell was saying and alluding to in the words I've heard him say earlier this week, if it wasn't for the fact that he was taken out of the game against the Giants and was looked at for that possible concussion issue and protocol, whatever the case may be, then there's a likely chance that he would have started this game instead of waiting until the second half. So the fact that Dan Campbell admitted that shows of how they view on his progress and what he showed, not just in the last game alone, and of course being vindicated of sorts by what we saw in this game. 12 of 15 passing, 161 total yards, plus the rushing touchdown. You saw how way more effective he was than Nate Sudfeld in every aspect, every situation. I understand he's been there for a long time. I know I'm sure that the coaches and some players love him, but he just does not bring that type of value to the team to where he can be seen as a reliable backup or a reliable QB2. He's just not. Hendon Hooker, despite the fact that he's in his second year and he's 26 and he's coming off a knee injury, he's looking more comfortable as the backup than Nate Sudfeld. That's just simply what I'm seeing. And the fact that he may very well start this upcoming last preseason finale may speak to that case as well. Speaking of making a case, I'm looking at Sione Vaki, and I think he's going to make a good chance of possibly supplanting Craig Reynolds as the third string running back on this team, because what we've seen from him 2 games so far is effort, drive, and yak. whether it be yak yards after carry, yak yards after catch, or even yak yards after contact. I'm looking at him so far after these 2 games. He's got 10 carries for 51 yards, 4 receptions for 60 yards, and he's doing this on this terms of upon average. Every time he's touching the ball, is either running it for you for 5 yards at a pop, or he's making plays where he can't be brought down and averaging 10 and 15 yards, it seems, on his reception plays. So, and he's bet that he's doing that on less than 40 snaps so far in the preseason shows that he's making the true effort out of what he's been given. The fact to where I think a lot of people are looking at this guy to, hey, this may be our third string running back. And speaking of third strings, we haven't really quite see a true standout yet at the wideout position in terms of who's going to be that receiver 3 behind St. Brown and behind Jameson Williams, or if you want to be technical, receiver 4, because I'm sure a lot of people consider Laporta as great of a weapon that he is as that second receiver option, or third, depending on how you debate it between him and JMO. So who's going to be that next guy up on that technically, wide receiver 3 on that depth chart?
For those that are watching, by the way, Laporta is a tight end, in case they don't know.
Exactly. But because he's been so effective as a weapon and as a receiving option last year, I'm sure a lot of people are going to classify him as that, that top 2 or top 3 receiving option, regardless of position. But nonetheless, looking at the guys at the receiver 3 spot that could make a name for themselves, I'm looking at a few guys. Donovan Peoples-Jones is one, considering the fact that he's getting a chance to get a full off season to work his way in with the team, see how he meshes well. Khalif Raymond, longtime veteran, obviously has value on special teams. Dan Campbell gushed this week on how effective and useful that Khalif Raymond is, to the point to where he wishes someone in that wide receiving room steps up so that he can limit some of Raymond's snaps in the offense and utilize them for other things, namely for special teams, and also just not wear him out, because he feels and believes firmly that what Raymond brings to the table can only be exerted so far. So while hey, if it comes down to it, you know that he's going to be willing and ready to give you his all for how long you want to play him for. It'd be 50 snaps or 60 snaps. But he feels the most effective way to use him would be probably to lessen that workload to about 25 or 30 snaps. If so, you're going to need to see one of these receivers step up and make a name for themselves, which is why I liked what I saw from Isaiah Williams in this past game against Kansas City. He was making some catches, making some moves, putting a lot of effort in his runs after the catch. He could be a guy to, if he stays healthy, you could see him getting one of those last few roster spots as whether it be with or behind Donovan Peoples-Jones, because I think, Raymond's spot is secure. But this is where it's showing losing Josh Reynolds in free agency really hurt. Because
the Broncos.
Yeah, so it's showing a void. You can tell that hopefully, if we do see a breakout from Jameson Williams, it can quell down some trepidation on what the offense can do. So honestly, this potential weakness could be nullified if we do see this massive jump in improvement in production from JMO. I agree with you for sure about Jake Bates. At this point, the kicking job is his to lose. He's showing he can be reliable. He's showing he can be clutch. He's showing you he can get those kicks for you when necessary, and of course at clutch time, because he hit the kick that ultimately won the game at the buzzer. That's going to be important whether it comes down to a big game, a primetime game, or dare I say even a playoff game, because that's what some people are theorizing. That's what led to Dan Campbell making those fourth down decisions the way he did, because he didn't trust his kicker. Well, if you have a kicker that you can trust,
Michael Badgley by name.
Yes, that'll be Legatron.
Badgley is, by the way, is out for the season, in case some don't have forgotten.
Yeah, and this injury essentially opened the door for Bates to really push on through and showcase why he should be the definitive starting kicker, regardless if Badgley was injured or not. So Bates, to me, is the kicker until further notice. Hooker is the backup. He's QB2 until further notice. And Sionavaki, I don't care what you use him for. It could be running back 3. It could be backup safety. It could be special teams, whatever. This guy is showing you so far throughout these 2 preseason games that he deserves.
Or even a backup tight end.
Well, don't go too far. I understand maybe H-back, but whatever the case may be, he's showing you throughout these 2 games that he deserves a spot on that 53-man spot, 53-man roster, and can be useful in more. Can get more than a handful of snaps. You can draw up plays. You can draw up designs to where he can be involved, and it won't be a detriment to your offense at all. Speaking of the offense, I was seeing good job. Much better play this time from the offensive line compared to what I saw last week against the Giants. They were being able to be more upfront, dictate the pace, set the tone against Kansas City. And on the opposite end of things, speaking of trenches, the defensive line is really showing their depth. I think we're going to see a much more improved defensive line that can give Aiden Hutchinson some needed help. We saw Josh Paschal. He had a strip sack. I saw Isaac Ukwu having himself another name where he had a sack himself. He's trying to prove himself to get one of those last 53-man spots as well. Dan Campbell mentioned him as being a guy who came into camp as essentially dead last on the depth chart with a defensive line. And so he's making the most of what he can provide by showing you that he can be a guy that can use it in rotation, help out, give guys out that may need a breath or whatever, just show depth in general. And speaking of depth, how about Matthew Betts getting himself, the CFL signee getting himself a sack as well in that game? So that'll be another key piece that can be shown as showing off what you have in this depth. Because, like I said, while Aiden Hutchinson did last year was great, it would be more beneficial if he has something more akin to where he had in Michigan, where he had a David Ojabo of sorts, helping him wreak havoc, whether it be on the opposite end or somewhere within that defensive line. I like what I saw out of Aleem McNeil. I do think once we see DJ Reader healthy and fully involved with things, that would be a big benefit as well. But you guys see who else can step up. So whether it be a Levi Onwuzurike, a Broderick Martin that we saw last week, this week with Paschal, what we've seen consistently with Ukwu, now we're seeing with Betts, hopefully. We got to see that showcase itself more and more. And once we see that alone will be a benefit or showcase of how well improved this defense can be. Because while it's nice that we're putting attention on the fact that we're investing into the secondary, we still have question marks on what the defensive line can do. Sans Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah. So the Lions, final week in the NFL preseason, which is their only preseason home game, Saturday at 1 on the Lions television network on Local 32 up here, and on Fox 2 WJBK in Detroit, and all Fox affiliates around the state of Michigan, against the against Urinating Trees Pittsburgh Steelers Saturday at 1 at Ford Field. So before we go to our What We've Learned segment, Lions offensive tackle Penei Sewell was being evaluated with a foot injury that he suffered in practice, but he walked off on his own power into the locker room. So this injury might not be serious either.
No, it won't, and I can confirm and tell you that with an update based on recent info that I saw on Twitter, that Sewell was confirmed to have just a rolled ankle. So more than likely, he probably wasn't going to play anyway, in this finale. But this is just going to be an ample reason for him to get some rest, and also see whatever the rest of the backup offensive linemen can do, showcase their depth and whatnot. But yeah, scary moment, scary look. But thankfully, it looks like the big guy is going to be okay.
Yeah, but it does get a lot of fans to panic and stuff. But really, they're all going to be fine, to be honest. So, what all did we learn in this week's episode?
Well, we learned in terms of the with the Michigan Wolverines that they're obviously far from done with the NCAA in terms of their investigations. their controversies, their issues, their scandals, however you look at that. We also learned that Mel Tucker is not done trying to get back whatever money that he feels he's still owed or what was taken from him, even though it was his own dumbass actions that brought about his own firing in the first place. We've also learned that the Tigers are consistent to remain inconsistent, even though we're seeing some notable improvement from recent returnees, such as Kerry Carpenter, such as Riley, Torkelson to an extent, but most certainly with guys like Parker Meadow as well. While also learning to or trying to figure out what can they do with this upcoming offseason, because the way things are looking, they're likely not going to even try to contend for that third wild card spot. So that's still a to be determined when it comes to the Tigers. And frankly, we also learned that within this Lions this past Lions preseason game, that Hendon Hooker should be your definitive official backup quarterback. He should be the QB2 in the depth chart. There's no problem. There should be no dispute or debate about that. Sione Vaki should be making a case to potentially be the third string running back. And we've learned that there's been no true standout to make a name for himself outside the usual starters in the wide receiving room. But we're also learning that the defensive line is showing themselves to be potential noteworthy improvements by showcasing their depth and showcasing the players that they have now that can contribute this year versus what we saw last year.
All right. So, and what we've learned for the Tigers, they're still not ready to contend, but they might next year. But they still have some work to do. But we know Chris Ilitch. We've touched on him. We've talked about him. Our lack of trust in him, things like that. So that's another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on the Huddle Sports Network. I'm Taylor Phillips. He's Ed Smith. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Michigan_Truth, and like its Facebook page. Subscribe to its YouTube channel at the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Like our videos and turn on all notifications on the bell icon. Watch each of our episodes in full to help improve our public watch hours. Follow it and listen to it in audio form on Spreaker. Follow me on X, TikTok, and Instagram at DT2Phillips. Also on YouTube at DT2Phillips. Follow Ed Smith on X, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube at EdSmith313. Business endorsements go to Athletico Physical Therapy on Woodward and Ferndale, the B4 Foundation, Cali Tickets. Call Mark Goldman at 877-225-8425 or visit CaliTickets.com. Creative Embroidery of Cadillac for designing the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast logo on my long sleeve shirt and t-shirt back behind me. Cuts by Melanie in Lake City. I'm getting a haircut later today, 12:20 a.m. The time as we're live. J&H Family Food Stores. Let's Roll With It Rolled Ice Cream and Cadillac. Like their Facebook page. Follow them on TikTok at The Food Mafia LLC and at The Food Mafia Rolled Ice Cream on Instagram. Northern Star Event Rentals in Cadillac, 231-884-8195, and on Facebook. Samaritas, senior living and foster care locations all around the state of Michigan, including my workplace senior living facility in Cadillac. Simply Delightful, with over 100 locations in Michigan. They're delightful fudges and candies and stuff. Union Barber in Birmingham and Ferndale. United Food Service Solutions of Grand Ledge, Michigan. United Mobile Power Wash and Dry Ice Works in Southfield. And Wellbeing with Catherine Palms. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast is a presentation of the Huddle Sports Network. We'll be back next week to preview the football seasons for the Michigan and Michigan State football, Michigan Wolverines and Michigan State Spartans. And and then probably the week after that, we'll preview the Lions regular season. So until then, for Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips signing out. But remember, we observe and detect the truth about Michigan sports because the truth is out there. Stay on the lookout. Ta-ta for now. Hit him with a hind.
Take care and stay safe, everybody.